Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm the Acting Secretary, Ann Sayers, for the Wisconsin Department of Tourism. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining this session. We know when it comes to breakout sessions, you have a choice, so we're grateful you chose us. As you'll recall, back in early 2019, we led an industry-engaged strategic plan to set the course for the department. And what came out of that as a top priority was fostering positive traveler experiences for all by prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion across agency programs and partnerships. As a first step, we formed a diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion committee and connected to the Wisconsin Council on Tourism, as well as an internal staff-led task force. With many, many thanks to the energy and dedication of those groups, we're moving quickly and we're making progress. And every day we learn more about what we can and should and want to be doing. And we also identify more resources to support us on this journey, which is how we first met Danny Guerrero of MMGY. I'm thrilled that he can be here today to share learnings from the report, The Black Traveler: Insights, Opportunities, and Priorities, which was just completed in January. Joining Danny are Ms. Marty Lewis, President of the Black Travel Alliance, and Jason Dunn, immediate past chairman of the National Coalition of Black Meeting Professionals. Danny's going to kick things off for us with a 25-minute presentation, and then he'll invite Marty and Jason in for 10 minutes of discussion, leaving all of us with about 10 more minutes for Q&A. So please feel free to be typing your questions into the chat. We'll have time to address those at the end. And also feel free to use that chat for reactions and to engage with one another. We really want this to be a lively discussion. I'm really looking forward to it, so I'm not going to delay any further and turn it over to you, Danny. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks to the Wisconsin tourism community for having us today. Really happy to be with you all presenting the findings of a groundbreaking study that we initiated in 2020. I'm Danny Guerrero. I'm VP North America Strategy and also co-chair of our own DEI Council at MMGY Global. Back in 2019, I began conversations with Marty regarding utilizing the power of our agency, and as a person of color myself, finding ways to bring better insights or just insights underrepresented travelers to market. Obviously, the events of 2020 and the tragic death of George Floyd really pushed everybody to do better, do more, do it immediately. So there was no longer a question of if or how or when, it was now. And so this study came about after obviously a lot of soul searching, but also a lot of realization that as leaders in the industry and travel, MMGY needed to take an active role. So that's a little bit about MMGY. We are the world's leading integrated marketing tourism operation with arms all over the globe in marketing. But one of those brands is the MMGY Travel Intelligence brand, which has been operating for 40 years. For many years, we've been collecting data on travelers of all kinds. But again, not until 2020, we started actualizing our data to be more inclusive and highlight the needs of underrepresented travelers. A little bit about the study, we wanted to make sure that we were hitting as many areas as possible. When working with the Black Travel Alliance, we also were urged to look at not only US Black travelers, but also global. The power of the global Black traveler, which is obviously important. And while the study did achieve a significant amount of markets in terms of where we research, there's a lot more work to do. But this is a great beginning. So phase one was released in November of 2020. It included data from the 2019 Shifted Performance Monitor data that I mentioned we've been receiving for years, but never really broke it out. In addition to that, we partnered with Jason and the National Coalition of Black Meeting Professionals on a custom survey of meeting planners in the meetings and group space. The NCBMP has been a fantastic partner, and I'll share a little bit more about their mission in a minute. So the first phase really coupled some insights on the Black traveler in the US, paired with the Black Meeting Professional study, which really illuminates some really important findings we'll go over again shortly. The phase two part of the study was a global custom study action in 2020, obviously in the middle of a pandemic. It's the first of its kind study to really have this depth and breadth of leisure-focused questions in multiple markets. And so you'll see in the presentation, we break out the deck between phase one and phase two. Obviously, we've introduced Marty and Jason, but I want to really give kudos to not only them, but their teams at their organizations. They've served as the study co-chairs. One of the things that we wanted to do with the study is make sure we were inclusive about not only giving back, but also making sure that these organizations and a steering committee was part of the survey process, the questions we were going to ask, the themes. The Black Travel Alliance certainly has been instrumental in illuminating the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Marty, through her own travel report, diversity and travel report card and scorecard, but also the BTA and their pull-up campaign, Pull Up for Travel campaign, launched in June of last year, which really pushed destination marketing organizations, travel brands, to not only post Black squares, but also have some meaning behind what they were doing as organizations to be more inclusive and be representative. The BTA is a wonderful group of global content creators, influencers, and voices who we're happy to partner with, not only on this study, but on future initiatives as well. The NCBMP is a wonderful organization, has been around, and hopefully I'll get this right, Jason, since 1985. Did I get that right? And so
1983.
1983. Oh, almost. 1983, obviously advocating for the needs of Black meeting professionals in the country. When we were talking to Jason, we talked about the need for more awareness of the power of the Black meeting professional and the issues and challenges, which we'll talk about in this presentation. And our third partner is the National Association of Black Hotel Owners, Operators, and Developers, an organization that's really focused on increasing ownership of Black hospitality products and services, and they do a lot of advocacy work in this space. I mentioned these three organizations because part of the study, which Wisconsin generously supported, is that 100% of the net proceeds are going back to these three organizations. Plus, we're gonna launch just next Monday 2 grants that both Jason and Marty's team have put together to benefit Black content creators and Black travel organizations. Today, we have raised over $100,000 to give back to the Black travel community, and I'm really happy that we can say that, and we're looking forward to launching that. So you can find more about that on mmgyglobal.com starting Monday, April 5th. Really quickly, a steering committee was developed for diverse perspectives and insights from every sector of travel and tourism, whether it's the OTAs, destination marketing organizations, hospitality, even academic resources were tapped for the development of this study. So it is inclusive in the way we approached it. Without further ado, phase 1 revealed that there is a significant amount of travel among the US Black leisure market. Over 458 million travelers stays, accounts for over 13% in 2019. And we chose 2019 because that's the last normal travel year. Obviously, we'll be continuing to index against this number in 2020, 2021, and beyond. And obviously, as the industry recovers from COVID and the pandemic, we hope to see, and we'll likely see, this number increase, but a very significant number there. In terms of demographics, we found a lot of similarities with all US leisure travelers. So what we did is compare the Black leisure traveler to all US leisure travelers. In terms of employment status, age, presence of children, a lot of similarities there. Household income, median income is a bit less. And when I say median income, that is obviously the median. There are gonna be Black households that have a lot more wealth and disposable income and some that have fewer. But I say that because one of the important findings of this is regardless of that, the median income being lower than the US average, Black individuals are taking more trips than the total US leisure market. Outside of 2018, we see here that actually Black leisure travelers spent more of their disposable income on leisure vacations, leisure trips. And that's a really important point to make, especially for marketers in the room. When you are targeting audiences based on household income, that might not be the best way to really assess whether they're have propensity to spend in your destination. We're seeing a lot of incidences of visiting friends and relatives as well, but generally leisure is important. Weekend trips, visiting friends and relatives. Later on, I'll talk a little bit about some of the top line findings that we have regarding safety, and the idea that a lot of Black travelers are choosing to visit friends and relatives because they feel safer that way, because they know that by visiting families and friends and places that they know, that there is an assurance that there'll be a component of safety. really great points here is that over 85% of the Black leisure traveler are either traveling alone or in pairs. And I think that when you then aggregate the need for feeling safe and feeling welcomed, if you're a solo traveler, obviously you're going to want to know that the destination is safe for you. So a big opportunity there for destinations to really level up on that. For the purposes of phase one, 94% were reporting traveling domestically. Again, in phase two, we have more of a global perspective. And when you look at US travel, 85% of the travelers surveyed in 2019 are traveling by car, an average of 240 miles one way, which is a huge opportunity, not only for destinations, but hospitality brands. But also begs the question, when you take the aggregate of the findings, my apologies, and you look at how travelers are indicating concerns with safety and feeling welcomed, we have to make sure that road trip experiences and the destinations that are in those paths are inclusive, are welcoming, and are embracing of diverse travelers. In terms of top destinations of Black overnight travelers, we have primary dispersal happening in the South, 10% to Florida. I don't believe I see Wisconsin currently on this map. And many of the discussions we've had revolves around, again, feeling safe, visiting friends and relatives, going to places that are inclusive or welcoming in a way where there is a lot of Black history and diaspora and cultural experiences that Black travelers know are welcoming. One of the things I say in giving these presentations is, for everybody who's not shaded, there's a huge opportunity for these destinations to do better about attracting the Black leisure traveler. I mentioned safety outside of 2018 again, really concerning to see that Black leisure travelers feel less safe than the total US leisure traveler. We have some more data in phase two that will bolster and reinforce this point. It's disheartening to see for sure, but obviously there's a lot of reasons why this is happening in terms of the racial injustice and the societal issues that plague our country still. So I think there's an opportunity there for the travel industry to do better about leveling this out, and hopefully even seeing numbers surpass someday the total US leisure number. So that's a little bit of a snapshot, obviously not a comprehensive review of phase one. Phase one also includes, as I mentioned, the US Black meeting professionals information that's really helped the NCBMP advocate for these groups. 7.5 average number of meetings planned per year, with an average annual spend of $914,000, which is not an insignificant amount. The average spend per meeting is around $122,000. And again, I think when we look at dispersal, these are destinations and places that are holding meetings that have done a lot of work in either organically building, welcoming environments, welcoming hospitality experiences, or just understanding the Black meetings market. I do see Milwaukee peeking out through there. So I think that, there's a lot of opportunity, again, for destinations that are not prominently, listed on here to do better about being more welcoming to the Black meeting professional. The demographics between 31 and 64, primarily Black attendees, split between male and female. I think the most important box here is a middle box when we talk about the attendees are Black. So you have Black meeting professionals planning meetings for primarily Black audiences. And so what you'll see in a couple slides is how does that demographic reality affect the experience? Does it affect the experience? So, and it's important, obviously to understand not only what the impact is of these meetings to the actual venues, conference centers, hotels, but also the destination at large. 57% are planning activities outside of the meeting venue, with an average spend of about 120. 83% of these meeting professionals are reaching out to the CVB DMO for assistance in planning. But when it comes to choosing locations before they're actually planning in that location, you see here that 78% are using word of mouth recommendations. likely through the NCBMP network and trusted colleagues and associates. Very similar when you look at what you're seeing on the leisure side in terms of the importance of visiting friends and relatives and the importance of trusting places you know. It could be said that the similar is happening with the Black meeting professional, that they're using a lot of references from colleagues regarding whether or not these places are welcoming and inclusive, because these things matter. They're influential, as this slide notes, that 84% want to know that a destination is committed to diversity and inclusion, that they want to know that there's a diverse racial composition of the destination, or that there's local community support. Not every destination will have full racial diversity in terms of its residents, but that the most important thing is that there's a commitment to diversity and inclusion when you see the 84% number up there. And that representation of Black travelers in destination marketing materials matters. And I think, at this stage in the game, with all the conversations around DEI, hopefully representation visually in marketing materials is low-hanging fruit for everybody. And we'll talk about some of the things that we're seeing, that meeting professionals want to see, both destinations and hospitality brands do. I mentioned earlier that the majority, 74%, I believe, of the attendees of these, attending the meetings from Black meeting professional plan meetings are Black. So when you look at the fact that the top challenge is that attendee satisfaction, 67% is a challenge in planning meetings. It's a little bit disconcerting, and even more so when you look at the number here regarding poor customer service, and that obviously is not only for the meeting professional but likely also for the attendee. Just yesterday, I was on a meeting with San Francisco Travel. And being here on the West Coast, heard some really interesting anecdotes from a major hotel there regarding some previous challenges with hosting Black groups, or previous decisions that were made that might illuminate, and not taking a dig at San Francisco Travel. This is a national and global issue. When we have bias, and when we have ways of looking at stereotyping groups, we obviously that does sometimes correlate to how we're extending service. So I think it's important to have these numbers in front of us. 84% agree that some destinations are more welcoming of Black groups than others. And I think this quote says a lot. It says, "We do not receive some of the same incentives as other groups. We do not receive red carpet treatment due to the lack of understanding of what the group represents and the significance of selecting the city. Black groups must consider if a city or venue is friendly to Black people first before considering doing business." And obviously, when you look at the dispersal of the map, and when people aren't seeing that necessarily, then you have a lot of repeat business for destinations who are welcoming and inclusive. And the reality is that loyalty is there. And this is why you're seeing a lot of the same places pop up probably. And 90% agree that attendees are likely to return to destinations if they have a good experience there. So these are the attendees, again, most 74% being Black, that if they have a good experience on the meetings and group side, that they'll have obviously an opportunity to come back and enjoy the destination for a leisure stay. I think the one item here is that it's not just about seeing Black people in advertising. It's about seeing Black hospitality professionals at every level of management. And that plays a role in deciding to bring meetings to a destination. So 84% of the respondents agreed that it's more than just representation. It's important. And you see here on the left that it's 86% agree that's the case. But really important to note here that it has to go deeper than that. So that's a snapshot of the Black meeting professional survey conducted among the NCBMP membership. Phase 2 now will share the data in a way that you can contrast and compare, showing results from the US, Canada, UK, Ireland, France, Germany. You'll see some nuances there between some of the responses. In France and Germany, we see that a lot of the English-speaking countries are sharing a lot of the same sentiment. But some top line slides for you to understand. And again, this survey was conducted in 2020. The fact that 38% of respondents have felt unwelcome in destinations that they have visited is obviously concerning in the US. Specifically in hotels and resorts, that they felt unwelcome around the same, 37% for US, 36% for Canada. You see the whopping number there for France. Obviously a concerning point. And the fact of the matter is that race does play a role in the overall travel experience. 45% of respondents in the US noted that. And I think, we've come to an end of an era when I think a lot of marketers and travel marketing experts used to use inclusivity as a way to say, everybody matters, we treat everybody the same, everybody's welcome. And in reality, there was all this unconscious bias happening where that's not the case. If you are a person of color, the way you're perceived, the way you think you're going to be welcome definitely has an impact on how, your travel experience works out. I know that's the case for me as a person of color. And 74% believe that it's influential that a destination is welcoming of Black travelers. I think we saw that reflected also in the meeting planners study, but pretty high incidence as well for Canada here. Reinforcing some of the points we saw in the Black meeting professional study that, in the US, 68%, it's influential for consumers to see the commitment to diversity and inclusion, right? And sometimes these things aren't easily conveyed in an advertisement or a PR campaign. But I believe what's happening is that consumers and Black consumers are becoming more and more savvy and have a keen awareness of what travel brands and destinations are doing. And I think organizations like the Black Travel Alliance certainly have a hand in that. And the reality is that 54% agree here in the US that they're more likely to visit a destination if they see Black representation. 48% say they're more likely to purchase from a travel service provider. It's not just obviously about destinations doing the work, but also the travel service providers, whether that's tour operators, local restaurants, day tour companies, spas, what have you, wellness places. It needs to, this needs to permeate throughout the destination experience. And one of the things that I think is important too, is we talk about the Black traveler, one, it's not a monolithic group. So the study provides a lot of top line findings that attempt to raise the issues and the concerns and also the opportunities. But in reality, all travelers want the similar things, right? We all want relaxation. We all want to visit somewhere new. We all want to experience different cultures. But what you're seeing here is by market, really things are rising to the top in terms of where the interest is happening. For the US specifically, exploration and expanding the worldview is becoming more important. I do think that a lot of the empowerment of Black travelers here in the US is leading to them wanting to discover more of the world and open horizons. And that's a very good thing. So as Wisconsin and the different tourism experiences in the state look within, there's really a lot of opportunity for a destination like Wisconsin to really, play into this. What are the opportunities for Black travelers to learn something new about themselves or about the destination that they can connect to? So I think an important kind of, snapshot here about how these different travelers are noting their interests. Obviously 2021, still, we have yet to see what happens in terms of travel recovery. I think there's very positive indicators that travel recovery is underway. When it comes to the intent to travel, there's a 0.4 of a point drop among Black travelers for trips in 2021, which is a drop, but not obviously a full point drop like you see in other markets. The UK market is the most resilient at this point. A lot of our research outside of this study points to Black leisure travelers wanting, as long as the safety is there and the vaccine is there, being ready to take trips, ready to take cruises and go back to business travel, which is an important thing to note. In terms of spend in the US, we obviously, anticipate at the time of the survey, this is before the stimulus and other things have happened, that the intended spend is less. I mean, I'll be curious to see how this actually realizes itself in the year. But important to note, as I noted before, is that, as a part of this total income, Black travelers are spending more of their disposable income on travel experiences. And that is also the case when you compare US to the rest of the world. And the number here is, over $129 billion was spent by Black travelers in 2019. This is a number, that Marty will agree, up until this year, last year, there was a very outdated figure that we were using or we were seeing that really didn't capture the full power of the Black travel community. So this is important. The average spend per trip is a bit over 1,400. Average length of stay is about 4.5 nights. And the average travel party size is about 3.2. Again, we see 39% are traveling solo, 30% are couples or are pair traveling. 59% are staying in hotels, and about the same amount are using OTAs as accommodation websites. So again, if you are an OTA or an accommodation website, it's important that the representation and the commitment to diversity and inclusion is present on those vehicles. One of these we're seeing too, as we talked about earlier about expanding worldview and expanding horizons, amongst Black travelers, we're seeing an uptick in interest in culture, in relating to cultural experiences, whether it's visiting Black history sites, historic sites, or touring and sightseeing, just getting out. And you'll see here that compared to 2019 and 2021, we have a 2-point increase in culture, in going to attractions, in outdoor sports and nature, in wellness. A lot of focus on self, a lot of focus, like everybody else after the pandemic, on just getting out and experiencing the world. So opportunities there, obviously again for Wisconsin. When it comes to influential when choosing a destination, we've seen some of these numbers before, but toward the bottom, we see 62% want to know that destinations offer Black cultural experiences, that there are a promotion of Black-owned hospitality businesses where they exist. And again, that, the work of the BTA is important. The destination has been promoted by Black travel media, journalists, bloggers, social media. Over 50% note that is influential when choosing a destination. And before I showed the graph regarding safety among all US leisure travelers and Black travelers, this actualizes that point a little bit more. 69% of respondents say that as a Black traveler, they feel like they have to be more aware of their surroundings when traveling, which is disconcerting. Another amount, 67% want to see more Black-owned brands and products in hotels and resorts. I think it's really important here too is, 53% say that the Black Lives Matter movement has made them more aware of racial inequity when it comes to travel. And again, so there is a large narrative and discourse within the Black travel community, led by BTA, Nomadness Tribe, and others that talk about the importance of having an equal seat at the table and seeing yourself in the experience. So I think it's important to understand. Quickly, I'll go through the spending power of Black travelers in each of the markets, which is pretty significant in aggregate when you add the 129 billion from the US. In Canada, it's almost 8 billion US. In UK and Ireland, it's 9 billion. In Germany, it's over 8 billion. And France is 5 billion. And so again, adding all these numbers up, you start to see the global impact and the importance of the Black travel market. I'll end with the media influencer section, which kind of recaps some of the points I've been making before regarding the importance of the Black travel movement. In fact, again, and I kind of noted this, that Black travelers want to see themselves represented in coverage, whether it's social media content, whether it's journalist coverage, media coverage. 46% agree in the US that's important. In terms of awareness of Black travel groups, 48% of those surveyed here in the US are aware of these travel groups listed here. And within that group, 58% are actually members. So again, Marty and other groups are doing a fantastic job of illuminating. Sorry, my mouse really wants to get ahead of me today. I wanted to just note this. I mentioned before, over $100,000 has been raised for net proceeds. We're still obviously marketing the study. What I presented today was just a top line overview, a snapshot of what's included. You get over 300 pages of data and information that will help you better prepare and understand the market at a high level. The report's available on mmgyintel.com. And again, 100% of the net proceeds go back to these 3 organizations and the grant. I'm really happy also to kind of make this plug. We're now launching our next study in underrepresented travelers, which is the Latinx US travelers. We hope to have this study complete late spring, early summer, really focusing on the diaspora. intersectionality of the Latinx community here in the US, which is very diverse and I think important for any destination or travel brand to know more about. I really thank you for your time, and that's a little bit of an overview of the Black Traveler Study. I'm excited to chat with all of you now on what this means. Thank you.
Danny, we don't have any questions that have come in yet, but did you guys have a planned discussion you wanted to have about the study? You're on mute.
I want to take the opportunity to obviously give Marty and Jason to talk a little bit about kind of what this study has meant to their organizations, and also really talk about what's happened since. You know, we've been talking about this work for a few months now. We've been successful in selling the report to many organizations. You know, maybe a little bit of anecdotes about what you're seeing. You know, how are brands actually taking this? What has it meant to your organizations? You know, a little bit of an overview and backgrounder for those that are looking for ways to apply the research. You know, what are the takeaways? What does it mean in the bigger picture? So yeah, I'll throw it to Jason, if that's okay, and we can have a little chat.
Yeah, so thank you, Danny, and thanks, Ann, and the state of Wisconsin for supporting this effort. It has been a no short feat for us, and frankly has been impactful overall for the industry. So I think in context for us, it has been a significant inspiration, because we knew what we spent in cities and what we offered in perspective for our impact, whether it was hotel revenue, whether it was the influence of this policy decisions, or just the fact that we're bringing to collectively people in a room to talk about whatever the mission of the organization was. And so for us to take the emotion out of it, I'm taking Marty's word for a second, and bringing the business perspective of it was very important to us, and frankly justified what we already knew. So I think as we look at cities broadening their marketing perspective, as they're looking at the emerging markets, because the country is browning, not in a way that is weak and threatening, but the facts are the facts. The demographics are shifting. And actually now between the ages of 18 to 26, there is all minority, it's just a minority majority stat. So if we look at the new consumer base, you have to figure out as a destination, as a city, as a state, how are you going to compete with other states and other DMOs relating to get these new consumer base. So this data will help you in guiding your decisions to be more relevant, to be consistent, and frankly, to compete with other organizations as you begin to look at the new consumer base and your constituents who you want to live, work, and play in your actual state. And I think it also, it lures corporations to your states as well. If you have a progressive state that is inviting for diverse persons, and tourism being that kind of venue that kind of showcases that, it makes you a holistic place to want to come, and you attract different business internationally, domestic, and it contributes to the workforce and to your tax base. And that's how I approach these things. Tourism is meant to be an economic booster for whatever reason it is. So you have to go where the trends are at. And if you don't, then what you're essentially saying is you don't want those new tax dollars, you don't want that new customer base, and you don't want to grow, and you don't want to compete. So if that's the case, then maybe that's a different perspective from us. But I think, again, it just justifies what it is that we've done, justifies what our spend is, and helps us to give the business case and hopefully turn the hearts of those who are making decisions to look at the new emerging markets. I yield to Marty.
Thank you, friend. It's good to see your face, by the way. We used to see each other a lot, but it's been a while. But yeah, this study meant a lot for everybody who is on the media side as well, because for years, if you can imagine, as content creators, as journalists, as social media influencers, this is what we've been trying to get tourism boards, CVBs, DMOs to see when hiring us, right? But they didn't used to want to hire us because they didn't necessarily see the value in Black travel. And you have to understand that prior to 2020, we only had research that came out every 5 years that actually said what the Black travel spend was. And it was only for America. It was never for international. It was never an international international look. But even then, those numbers weren't an accurate representation. So for example, the last numbers we had was 63 billion, and that came out in 2018, December of 2018. So how in 2020 is it now up to 109.4 billion? And so it shows like the numbers weren't necessarily accurate. Now, when it comes to, you know, talking about numbers, we know numbers don't lie. So like Jason said, it's a validation for us, because now we're saying, well, the proof is right here. And even then, now that you know, what are you going to do with the information to now move forward with the plan of action? And that is where our frustration came from, people who are part of the BTA, when we would be able to go out and say, you know, we are just as qualified, we write just as well, we want to share our stories, but we also want to give things a perspective from a Black traveler's perspective. Now we have the opportunity to do so because of this research. So it was extremely important to us on the media side as well. And brands, we have seen brands started to take that step and moving forward. Prior to 2020, you know, everybody was diversity and inclusion matters, but it never was supported by any plans. It was just literally buzzwords. Everywhere you went, diversity and inclusion, but nobody was really connecting. Nobody really knew what that meant or how to move forward. And or they say, oh, diversity and inclusion, we could post one post that's a Black family, but that was it. They weren't hiring internally. They weren't bringing in people to help work. They weren't hiring, you know, consultants to help out with their overall marketing strategy and schemes. But now that the magnifying glass is on everybody, people are looking to do more. And I'm grateful for that. We still have a long way to go, but I am grateful that we are able to move forward now with some of the things that Danny said, especially for the Wisconsin market. That whole travel by car piece is very, very significant for you guys. And why is that? Well, okay, Wisconsin, we know that Wisconsin might not be the most popular of places, but what we do know is that Wisconsin is by Chicago, which a lot of people might travel to, but if they get in a car, all they have to do is drive into Wisconsin, and there's a whole different world that they need to discover now, or that they've never discovered. So for example, as a content creator, I'm working with Janesville, Beloit, and Madison to be able to share a different perspective. And I've been trying to work with Janesville, I think, for maybe 3 years. And you might say, well, why do you care? Well, there's a part of the Underground Railroad that goes through Janesville. And that's part of the story that I want to tell. That's the part of the story that was left out. So understanding these things and understanding what we want as Black creators, you can find that in the study. As Black travelers, you can find that in the study, and you can apply it to your marketing plans or your marketing strategies moving forward. But understand that 85% are ready to get in a car and go. Think about even when they visit Chicago, them getting to your specific destinations and say, oh, well, we're just 2 hours away from Chicago. Oh, we're just 1.5. And another thing that you will find in the study is the amount of overnight trips that people want to take. That's a great weekend getaway. That's a great overnight trip when you're already somewhere in the Midwest to come to Wisconsin. So I definitely encourage people to buy it and use it as their strategies moving forward.
I think that the other second piece is that many of our groups are purpose driven. They're not profit driven, which means they have to meet because it's part of the mission of the organization. They're empowerment tools, they're policy changers. So, and frankly, we're recession proof. So as long as it's safe, our industry or our markets are going to be the groups that are going to bring back group tourism, frankly. But if you don't have a voice or engaged, or we don't see ourselves in your destination, we're not going to support your city. And just to be direct with each of you, because I play both hats. I'm with the Cincinnati Convention and Visitors Bureau, and I'm the past chairman of Coalition. And so we look at the economics of this. So look at where the dollars are coming and what groups are traveling now. And then are you really engaged in those umbrella organizations that are actually talking to those groups, right? And then second, look at the workforce. How does your workforce reflect the changing demographics? Because when we see a location that has many or diverse persons, we then know that it's okay to support or come. So many cities have hotels, many cities have convention bureaus and convention centers. So what, to Marty's point, what experiences are you creating that will draw me to your destination? And then what would I feel when I come, and what I want to be welcome and bring people back, as Marty has stated. So I think you got to look at the perspective as new business data, look at who is traveling, who isn't, look at the emerging demographics, whether it's Black or brown, and then you got to really sit along with stakeholders and see who do you want to be. and then use this data as a way to indicate or guide you to make those decisions. And I think that's all I really can offer. Everything else is just kind of, you're just talking.
And I know we have some questions in the portal, which I think it'd be good to get to since we have about, I think, 10 minutes left of the panel. Maybe I'll throw this, obviously I'm not Black, so I'll throw this to Marty and Jason about their thoughts. It seems unique that the majority, well, 46% of Black travelers are traveling solo, according to the 2019 SHIFT-Led data. Any further insights as to why this is the case? Not to stump you, but in terms of your personal experience.
So what I've seen in terms of Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z is that we don't want to wait on our friends and family anymore. We want to get out there and explore. So we don't need anybody to necessarily do that with us. With that number, you see that it's more women taking solo trips because they're ready to get out and explore. But with that, your job in terms of tourism in Wisconsin is making them feel welcome and safe. And like he said, safety is a huge issue, right? So if all we have heard, all we have seen are negative things about how Black women might feel in Wisconsin, that's gonna negatively impact how we travel to Wisconsin. Or if we go to your social media pages and we don't see ourselves reflected, how do we know that you welcome us? Obviously, Wisconsin is not filled with that many Black people. So we know that, internally your teams might not have a Black woman on there, or they might not have a Black man on there, but this is why you can hire somebody as consultants to say, what is it that Black women really want to see when they come somewhere? What is something that really, really makes them feel welcome? What is something that makes them feel safe? And those are things that you have to do to be able to tap into, those markets. But a lot of it is based off the fact that we just want to explore and we have the money to do it now. We're doing things a lot later in life. So there's a budget that we have for travel and we want to experience new destinations.
I think the other piece is, again, we are the largest consumer base. $1.3 trillion is what we represent to this local economy. I think second, social media. We traditionally, when I was growing up, we got in the car and we drove to a family member's house in maybe Atlanta or West Virginia or Chicago, and that's where we were. And that was, or Detroit. And those were our places of going because our family were there. Now that we see social media opportunities, we know we can travel and have the income to do that, then we would jump on a plane in a heartbeat and just go because we want to experience, or we see our friends doing it, et cetera. And it's given us empowerment to do so. So I think the exposure of different places, whether it's domestic or international, via social media and brands actually reaching out to this actual market has invited us to come and participate within those destinations. So we feel welcome to come.
Thank you. There's two questions that I think are similar in addressing each other. So one is by Susan Melton, who asks, as a destination, where is the best place to start implementing what we've learned from the study? And then Anonymous says, some destinations across Wisconsin aren't historically diverse, but that doesn't mean they aren't welcoming of more diverse audiences. How do we appeal to and show that we welcome diverse travelers, knowing that when they come, they may not see many people who look like them, although we hope to change that as time goes on. I'd like to start, if that's okay, and then we'll toss it to Marty and Jason. As a destination, I think it's really important that DEI doesn't become about just catering to Black or brown travelers, that it becomes being inclusive structurally. And that includes really engaging the local business, the local community, because there is diversity. It may not be completely obvious, but I'm sure there is going to be an LGBTQ segment, Indigenous segments, disabled segments. Diversity means many things. And what people want to see as people of color and diversity is that the destination is inclusive of people, because if it's inclusive of trans people, it's going to be inclusive of me, you would hope. So a lot of groundwork there on engaging community members, the typical organizations you wouldn't go to, church groups, LGBTQ centers, veterans. Who are the people that are not represented in your tourism offering, and how can you be more inclusive about doing those things? And again, when it's local, I think that on the meeting planner side, we saw that a lot of the meeting planners said local community support. Once you start fostering a diverse and inclusive community and destination, again, people will take to that in a way that it will be a little bit of work, sure. And this is not an overnight thing. It's not about just putting a Black or brown face on a brochure. And we saw that people want to see more meaningful structural change. And it's okay to have steps and have baby steps, and it's okay to work toward that as a goal. It's okay to partner with a Black content creator and expose what you're doing and being authentic about your journey. It's not an overnight switch and say, oh, and we're now inclusive and diverse. um, I want to toss it to Marty and Jason for maybe some final comments and maybe some perspective on that question. I know we're wrapping up in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'll try to be as brief as possible. So shout out to Susan, because Susan is an excellent example on how to connect with content creators that are, of different niches, right? I met Susan, I think, for the first time in 2019, and she has kept in touch with me until I'll see her sometime this summer. And the thing about it is, Susan probably stepped outside of her comfort zone by talking to somebody who's not necessarily reflected in the place that she represents, and that's okay. You have to be able to put yourself out there as the tourism professional and connect with these inclusive communities. So you don't only connect with them, through online media, but you connect with them in real life and you build a relationship, because then that authenticity that people will see from when I visit Janesville will make them want to go. And I always shout out people who I work with, on the other side, because you didn't have to talk to me. And I realized that, but she did it when it wasn't popular. Okay. Now it's popular. Now everybody wants to make sure that they're tapping into inclusive communities. She did it when it wasn't popular, and people should know that, and people will know that when I come to it. So it's just be authentic in your approach. BTA has something called Wavelength. The next one is May 22nd. We're specifically set up for brands to connect with Black content creators, because we used to always say, well, we can't find them. Okay, everybody has Google, so you just weren't looking. But now we're taking that excuse out and we're making it easy for you to find us. So I even encourage you guys to sign up for Wavelength so you can just talk to some different type of Black content creators. But it doesn't stop here, right? Yes, this is about a Black travel study, but there's Latinos, there's Asians, there's LGBTQ, there's plus size, there's people of different ages. You have to do the work to tap into those inclusive communities online. Nobody's gonna make you do it, but you have to make up in your mind that that is the right thing to do if you want to attract somebody new. You don't want to only attract people in Wisconsin. You want to reach out to different markets. So what does that look like? How do you go about doing that?
Well, I think from, again, the dual hat that I wear, some of us have to get up out of our robotic code, kind of car salesman types of approaches to sales. A more community selling method is what I always kind of push through the MOs. You have to have somebody or a department that is solely focused on community engagement and tying that back to the sales process, meaning that you can't just come up to a person and ask for the RFP. You got to be engaged in their local efforts, whether it's a bishop's anniversary, if it's the NAACP's annual breakfast or lunch, if it's the Urban League, or if it's La Raza's national organization. I mean, you have to be involved and outside of your box. And you have to have, to Marty's point, have an authentic relationship with these groups to know that they're there for them, you support them. And the second piece is you got to start from the top with your stakeholders. Make your stakeholders understand the importance of tourism, and it's not just booking hotels, or what it means to an actual ecosystem. It's workforce development, it's talent retention, it's bringing corporations to your destination, it's tax dollars that recycle throughout your community from fresh dollars coming in. Make the business case, and also kind of combine that with the community aspect of it, where you're bringing people together to show we have to be competitive, which means we have to reach out and get out of our boxes of just selling just the hotels or selling room sizes. You have to sell an experience. And then some you have to create experience. So some cities, to your point, may not have the diversity that you think you need, but if you create experiences where people or the markets of which you're trying to attract and come and have a good time within your region, they'll come because it's for them, it's designed for them. It's designed for them to have a good time, and they'll recognize that. So you got to kind of get out of the robotic, I've been making the cold calls, give me an RFP, sign a contract, and then kind of let you go. You gotta walk with them. You gotta, just as you want somebody to walk with you, think about that. You don't go to stores or take your family to places that you don't feel welcome or safe, or you don't know anybody there. It's the same person with us. So I think if you take the humanity in the selling process, if you look at how you would want to be spoken to and apply that to your daily sales tactics, or your inclusivity strategies, I think you'll be successful.
Awesome. I think that's time for us, Anne.
It is. Danny, I included a press release link to the study. I really want to encourage folks to take a look at it and consider purchasing it. I love this piece that allows it to support 3 additional diversity-based travel organizations. So the Wisconsin Department of Tourism has it, and we are already using it. We're really grateful for that, but encourage others to look into it as well. Marty, I was just looking for more information about Wavelength. I didn't immediately find it. Is that something that we could post here in the Q&A?
Yeah, sorry. So it launches on Monday, our signups for the May 22nd one. There is like a little blurb on it, but what I will say, if anybody wants the specific information sent to them, which we start sending them out tomorrow, we can send it to you. Just drop me their email so we can give them the deck. I mean, I have it right now. Actually, I'll post it to you and you can just send out the link if anybody wants to look at it. But yeah, it doesn't start till Monday for us.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. Are there any other resources like that that we should be aware of or that we could throw in the chat to support people? We did do a poll while you were talking about whether destinations and businesses are engaging the Black community in their tourism strategy. And we got mixed results, 46% yes, 23% not yet, but they have plans, and 31% saying not yet, and we could use some help figuring out how to get started. So any additional resources?
Yeah, in addition to BTA, I also work for Nomadness Travel Tribe, which Danny mentioned a few times, which Jason knows about as well. And we do something called Audacity Fest, which is a travel festival specifically for people of color. So we will have Audacity Digi on May the 1st, and then our in-person one, Lord willing, depending on what this pandemic is talking about, will be next year in person in New Jersey. But that always allows some of the same thing. It allows brands to come in, have those one-on-one appointments, but to really just come and see the different type of things that we're learning and the different type of things that we talk about as people of color who travel. So yeah, also if anybody would want a ticket to that, industry ticket, I can provide that for you, comp, so you can see what Audacity Fest is all about and just connect with different types of travelers, period. I'm willing to do that as well. So if people are serious, we're handing you these things on a platter. It's up to you to eat. But yeah, definitely. I don't have a problem sharing both those things, the Wavelength deck and then a ticket to Audacity Digi number 5, which is on May the 1st.
And for us, Coalition of Black Media Professionals, you can always become a member. Visit ncbmp.com, ncbmp.com. We have a annual convention in November coming up. We hope that it'll be in person in Cincinnati. We have the various virtual experiences during the year, and also we do things for Congressional Black Caucus. So we're very active in and out. So whether it's hybrid of events in person or on online, so check us out, ncbmp.com.
Thank you. Well, I can't thank our panelists enough. I think we're an 87% white state, and that percentage is higher even in rural areas, but we know that's not an excuse to not be doing this work, and that I really appreciated how you both addressed the why of it from the business case, but also from this is where we are and this is where we want to be, and this is it plays into our brand, which we discussed earlier this week or this session. This is who we are and where we want to be going, and these resources, your perspectives, these studies, this is all helping us on our way, and we can't thank you enough, and we hope you stay in touch, and we will do the same.